Welcome back. We are on Thursday. Today is Thursday, May 25th, and we are continuing this conversation about conflict. And Paul, I think one of the things that can make conflict so hard is that emotionally it feels like something is at stake. And I remember from the book Crucial Conversations that talked about why we struggle so much to deal with conflict is that when we need to be at our best, we're often at our worst, meaning that our emotions get the best of us, and we can find our heart rate going up. We can find all the things that almost like we're ready to have a physical confrontation. That dealing with conflict can bring us into a mindset that there might be some kind of significant physical harm coming our way.
Yeah, I think it's the fight or flight kind of thing that we often talk about, and when conflict comes, we do either want to get in that corner of, well, okay, we're going to fight it out, or I'm just going to leave.
Yeah.
And neither one of those are particularly effective ways of dealing.
Right. Neither gets us where we need to be.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how to avoid that. And Jesus gives us the blueprint today. Jesus gives us the blueprint for how we are to effectively deal, not if conflict comes, but when conflict occurs. It's critical that we don't do what is often called triangulation. Triangulation is that sense when if I've got a problem with Steve, I'm going to go and gather forces of somebody else and talk to them about it, talk about how wrong Steve is, try to convince you that I'm right, Steve's wrong, and therefore we're going to gang up, we're going to gather resources and be against Steve. This happens so often in so many places, including our churches. Someone has a problem with something that somebody said, or some change that happens, or something that they look at as the pastor and say, well, the pastor did not do this, or the pastor did that. And rather than go to the pastor, rather than go to the person who, quote, committed the offense, we start gathering up in our Sunday school classes and our groups.
Have you ever heard back from someone else some of the things that you did? And then you're like, what?
Yeah, so there was a fascinating thing one time where I went to visit an older couple, and I was taught to ask someone at the end of our conversation after we've had our visit, say, now, what would you like for me to pray for? Meaning, a child or, some ailment they had or something like that. And so when I asked that question, they looked at me kind of funny and didn't give a response. So I prayed and left. Turns out they were angry with me because they thought I was asking, well, why should I pray? Well, why am I even praying for? And I always go back to that and think just lack of communication.
And how did you find out they were upset with you?
Oh, it was through back channels,
right.
Of course, that they weren't going to come to church.
They didn't stop you on that moment and go, help me understand?
Yeah, so they found out they weren't going to come to church because I didn't know what prayer was for. And I was like, okay.
So they heard, why should I pray?
Yeah, why should I even bother praying for you all? And when I was simply asking them, how best can I pray for you, with you? So I've always thought about that one and kept that one in my back pocket as a way of just remembering how misunderstood we often are.
Yeah, I've and I won't get into too many details, but I've certainly heard things back from other people that I go, I don't know where that came from.
Right.
And a lot of it all of it could have been easily cleared up with a conversation. Mm-hmm. Hey, can I talk to you? I know, and those words, right, can I talk to you, often can send shivers down our spines. Because we're always a little apprehensive about what may come next. But when we live into who Jesus is and we trust this is the work of God, then what we are doing is being faithful to the instructions Jesus gives us. And that should give us strength in how we approach those conversations.
So oftentimes we become defensive when we think someone has a conflict with us. Well, it's not my problem, it's your problem. You're the problem. When the reality is when someone takes an offense at us, something we said we didn't say, something we did or didn't do, we often do. We internalize that and we think, well, they are calling us bad people. And I think we've got always to learn that that is not the right response to have. To say that someone has done something that has upset me does not mean that you're a bad person. It just simply means, like all of us, we are human beings who are prone to say things and do things maybe we shouldn't say or do.
And so much of it is often simply miscommunication.
Miscommunication or lack of understanding or lack of time and patience to understand. So when Jesus starts to tell us when another member of the church sins against you, go to that person. But then there's the next step. If there's a lack of understanding, if two people can't see eye to eye, and that's often going to happen, then there's a sense in which then we can bring others into the conversation. We can bring 2 or 3 more, and then we can invite that conversation.
But we have to remember, I think, that there are ways to go about it.
And ways to go about it.
That are helpful. And I heard it once said there are 2 types of people in this world, those who want to be right and those who want to get it right. We really have to strive to be the kind of people who want to get it right, because if it's about me and my ego, I'm going to stay in conflict with people all the time. But if I'm trying to get to the bigger picture of what God wants in this world, then I will sacrifice my own personal ego for the sake of getting it right in the larger context.
And so then Jesus goes on in the rest of this teaching and talks about, and if you eventually get the whole church involved, you keep going until there's resolution. You keep going until there's reconciliation. But if one party refuses that work of reconciliation, if one party refuses to, I'm right, the rest of you are wrong, then Jesus goes so far as to call that person and says, it's okay then for the church to set that person in what is in essence time out, to set them outside the community for a while, to set them outside so that they can be, there is a level of accountability that Jesus is calling for. It can't keep going and going and going. At some point, you've got to just say, okay, until you can understand that this is the work of the community, then you're going to be outside of it.
And this I can't even say that word. This assumes that there's the type of relationship that exists to where these type of things will have weight and that they will matter. So any coaching tips on how to have a difficult conversation? Any words that you find, any phrasing that you find are helpful for how you even initiate these conversations?
I think the byword, the key word is humility, is to always go into the conversation not presuming that you have it all right. It is a humble, it's a brokenness. It's not that I am trying to fix you. It is that I want this relationship to work.
So to put it in the parlance of South Georgia, don't bow up.
Don't go in like a bull. Don't go in.
But we often do that, right?
Oh,
I mean, that idea of
fix this,
I'm going to take out my anger on you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to settle this. I'm going to be, so to come at this with humility and our words matter. Don't ever think they don't. And how we begin conversations matter.
And that's why it's so important when you recognize that the relationship is more important than the conflict. That's the only way marriages can survive. If they recognize we're going to have disagreements as 2 human beings who are married, or 2 human beings, or again, parents. The relationship is more important than the conflict. Then you can virtually work through any kind of thing.
And I think also those open-ended questions of help me understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what am I not seeing here? How can we get to a better place? It be invitational, but at the heart of that is genuinely mean it.
Oh yeah, you can't fake it.
No.
You can't fake that. It's an authenticity that we must bring to those conversations, a spirit of humility, of brokenness, and saying that I might not get it all right, and I simply want our relationship, prioritize that. Whatever is going on, I think we can work through it.
Right. And again, it's not easy. It may be one of the more difficult things that you may have to do, but what is gained?
A long time ago, I learned that I can say the word, I'm sorry, and mean it from the standpoint, I'm sorry we had the conflict. I'm sorry there was misunderstanding. Even if I didn't feel like I said something wrong, I can say, I am sorry that there was miscommunication. I'm sorry that there was lack of understanding. And that's an important thing to be able to say to one another is, I care about you through this conflict.
So I think it's a pretty good segue into what we'll talk about tomorrow is how do we hear each other? How do we speak the same language? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow as we prepare to come into a weekend where we celebrate Pentecost.
Amen. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.